Under a sky the color of forged steel, a line of excavators crawls across the Sahel. Dust rises. Survey flags flicker. The camera drifts down to a trench cut into hard laterite. Workers guide rebar into place. A foreman signals. Concrete flows. It looks like nothing, and it looks like everything. A small seam in dry earth where water will soon move. This is the image that broke the timeline, a country that refuses to wait its turn, refuses to ask permission, and refuses to accept that the future will be decided in other capitals. Tonight, we follow those channels and ask a simple question with complicated answers. Did Ibrahim Traoré shock the world by building a giant canal without the West, or did he do something more radical than a single structure by changing the way a nation thinks about power, food, and pride? Start with the ground truth that matters most to people who live here. Water is not a talking point in the Sahel. It is the difference between hunger and a full granary, between migration and staying home, between fear and dignity. For decades, the state tried to trap brief rainy seasons inside reservoirs, spilling that water through gates, feeding primary canals, and using smaller channels to reach farms. Some systems worked. Others silted up. Pipes failed. Pumps burned out. Plans arrived with meetings and manuals, then faded when funding cycles shifted or priorities moved. People learned to be patient, or they learned to leave. That is the story Traoré said he came to end. The rumor online spoke in the language of spectacle. The biggest canal. The longest canal. A project to rival world shipping lanes. People love records because they're easy to picture and easy to share. But the most powerful changes are often the least cinematic. The work that actually transforms a food system looks more like this. Rehabilitate a neglected intake. Line a secondary channel to reduce losses. Add a small pumping station so water climbs a few meters to reach a terrace. Replace a broken gate so a field that stayed dry last season gets a controlled flow this one. It is a mosaic of fixes and extensions. You do not always see a single ribbon cutting. You see farmers planting later in the year because water still runs. You see a mill that stays open because grain keeps arriving. You see a distributor who finally brings fertilizer on time because the calendar is predictable. That is impact. None of this is apolitical. The words "without the West" mean something specific. They mean no waiting for loan approvals from institutions that take months to decide if a small dam gets a grant or a loan. They mean the work you choose, the crops you prioritize, and the prices you manage will be set in Ouagadougou or in the field itself, not by offices far away. The message is independence, but the method is infrastructure. Put water where it has never reliably gone and you change the map of power. Picture the practical sequence. Engineers walk the land with GPS and notebooks, checking slope, soil, and the old channels that still remember where water once moved. Hydrologists test how much can be stored and released without starving downstream users. Teams mark the right-of-way and sit with families whose plots will be crossed. Compensation is argued, then settled, because a canal that begins with bitterness rarely ends with maintenance. The first cut is shallow, a ditch carved like a guideline. Excavators deepen it. The base is compacted. In some stretches, a clay core and riprap are enough. In others, concrete lining is essential to keep losses low and weeds at bay. Gates arrive on flatbeds. Welders fabricate frames and screens. Workers lift and stop logs. A small powerhouse appears where a pump will lift water uphill. Control rooms get simple panels, because simple survives. Everything is numbered and mapped so a future crew knows what to fix when something fails. A canal is a promise, but it is also a machine. The camera moves along a primary channel into the command area, where the network branches like a hand into fingers. Tertiary canals feed blocks of fields. On-farm channels are shallow and narrow, holding just enough water to fill a basin without drowning the roots. A farmer walks the bunds with a shovel, cutting a notch to start the flow, closing it when the soil glistens. This is not romantic work. It is precise and exhausting. But precision here pays back tenfold. With irrigation, the cropping calendar no longer bows to the rain. Plant, harvest, dry, mill, store, sell. Then do it again when the sky would normally give nothing. Double cropping stops being a slogan and becomes a schedule. The crops tell the story better than any press conference. Rice fields that once produced a single modest harvest become consistent suppliers to local markets. Wheat appears in places where people used to say it could not work. Maize stands taller, less stressed by a mist storm. Vegetables fill gaps in nutrition and income. A woman in a bright headscarf counts a day's sales and looks up at the canal. She smiles because dignity has a shape. It looks like a full basket at the end of market day. There is a second story running beside the first. A story about money, not as abstraction, but as choices. Without the West does not mean without partners. It means selecting partners on your terms. That can involve domestic budget reallocations from less productive subsidies to irrigation capital. It can involve tapping diaspora savings with small, patriotic instruments dedicated to specific projects people can see. It can involve service contracts where the state owns the infrastructure and pays private crews only when the water actually flows. It can involve regional solidarity funds that move resources within the Sahel rather than waiting for outside approval. Each choice carries risk. Each choice carries pride. The difference is agency. None of this works without maintenance. Canals fill with silt if you pretend that flowing water is clean. Grass grows through concrete joints. Gates seize if no one greases them. A year becomes 2, and a small problem becomes a structural failure. The plan here is blunt. Budget for maintenance as seriously as for new cuts. Train local crews. Pay them on time. Give them spare parts where they work, not in a capital warehouse. Publish simple dashboards that show when sections were last cleared and where leaks are worst. When people can see that attention is paid, they protect the asset. When people believe the asset is ignored, they take it apart piece by piece, not out of malice, but because idle infrastructure always looks like free material. The third thread is security. You do not pour concrete in a vacuum. Crews travel in convoys. Work starts early and ends before long shadows gather. Communities are asked to watch at night, to call when strangers walk the embankment, to report when the fence is clipped or a lot goes missing. Security forces rotate gently, not to militarize a village, but to show that the state is present in a way more useful than a checkpoint. The best form of security, though, remains employment. A young man who earns his wage building and then maintaining a canal is less likely to be tempted by the quick money of trouble. The canal is literal, and it is political. It channels water. It also channels possibility. The environment demands its own chapter. Irrigation is adaptation when done well and disaster when done carelessly. You must respect the water balance or you draw down aquifers and leave wells dry. You must plan drainage or the same water that feeds a field will later salt the topsoil and kill roots. You must carve wildlife corridors because a straight line of concrete is a wall to small lives that matter more than people admit. You must watch downstream fishers who depend on releases from a dam and negotiate fair flows. The vision of independence is failed if it steals from neighbors. The technical fixes are known. Drainage tiles in waterlogged plots. Night flows to reduce evaporation. Periodic flushing to move salts. Scheduled environmental releases so a river is still a river. The discipline is not mysterious. The question is whether leaders have the patience to keep doing the unglamorous parts when the cameras leave. There is also the market. A farmer who grows more needs a buyer who pays fairly and a road that does not destroy a truck in a single season. Irrigation projects without post-harvest plans become short-lived stories. The channel feeds a field. The field must feed a mill. The mill must feed a market. Cold rooms prevent losses. Graders ensure quality. Microprocessors make flour and noodles that sell in city kiosks. Cooperatives help smallholders negotiate inputs and prices without being swallowed by middlemen. None of this requires hand-holding by distant agencies. It requires coordination and honesty, and the courage to publish prices so exploitation is harder. When a government commits to transparent market information, a farmer commits to planting again. Beyond the nation's borders, the politics are shifting fast. A bloc of Sahel countries has chosen to align their security and their economies in ways that de-emphasize old regional bodies and old donors. That posture is not a press release. It is a budget line moved from a consultancy to a Canal crew. It is a diplomatic choice to seek technology from wherever it can be found without strings that compromise sovereignty. It is the posture of a generation that grew up online and refuses to accept that development is a seminar controlled elsewhere. The price of that stance is isolation in some rooms. The reward is respect in others. This is the bet. Critics are not fools. They ask real questions. Will procurement be clean if projects accelerate outside familiar guardrails? Will quality control slip when speed becomes the political brand? Will a cult of personality overshadow institutions, making every channel a signature rather than a system others can maintain when leaders change? Will debt creep in through back doors, labeled as services but binding the state just the same? These are adult questions. The only adult answers are measurable. You demonstrate integrity by publishing tenders. You demonstrate durability by letting auditors audit. You demonstrate seriousness by showing year-over-year increases in irrigated area, yields, farm incomes, and lower food price spikes, and by letting independent outlets challenge your numbers without fear. Sovereignty is not a refusal to be questioned. It is the confidence to be questioned and continue anyway. The people closest to the water will tell you what is working long before a ministry does. Spend a day at the edge of a new lateral canal with an old farmer who has seen plans come and go. He will tap the concrete with a stick and tell you whether it is thick enough. He will glance at the gate and know if it will jam in the first harmattan. He will look at the alignment and tell you if the gradient is kind or cruel. He will measure success with the simplest instrument on earth. He will take a handful of soil, squeeze it, break it, and judge by feel whether the moisture is right. If it is, he will plant. If it is not, he will keep his seed in a sack and nod politely at speeches. Walk a little farther and sit with a young engineer who left a city job to work here. She opens her notebook. On one page are sketches of cross-sections. On another are lists of culverts that must be cleared before the next storm. She speaks about friction losses and gate coefficients in a quiet voice because she knows people distrust jargon. Then she closes the notebook and talks about pride. She says she used to design small things that disappeared inside larger projects with foreign logos. Now she sees her work in plain sight, carrying water across a field with her own name in the maintenance roster. She does not want credit. She wants continuity. By late afternoon, the canal looks different. The sun drops and the water reflects a cooler sky. A group of teenagers walks along the embankment, laughing, then quiet as they pass the new warning signs. They have grown up with stories that the state is a rumor. But they can kick the base of this channel and feel it is real. They can stand on the turnout and watch eddies curl. They can dream about jobs that are not a ticket out of the country but a craft that holds them here with purpose. There are not many things that bind people gently to a place after years of instability. Water is one. The global reaction to all of this was always going to split. Some observers rolled their eyes and called it propaganda. Others cheered every excavator as proof that a generation meant what it said about sovereignty. The truth is less noisy and more interesting. A government set a direction that many citizens wanted. It chose to move quickly in visible ways. It wrapped that work in symbolism because symbols travel. And behind the symbol, real systems are being extended, fixed, and defended. If those systems keep working, slogans will be remembered fondly. If they fail, slogans will sound like echoes. The test is not online. The test is whether grain fills warehouses when rains thin out, whether mothers find rice at prices they can afford, whether mills hum past sunset because electricity and supply are steady, whether insurgents find fewer recruits because more young people have work worth protecting. There is one more thread, sensitive but necessary. Transparency is a form of strength. Publishing maps of completed sections, with dates and contractors, does not help enemies as much as it helps citizens hold their state to account. Releasing maintenance logs online does not embarrass a ministry. It educates a public that often believes everything fails because no one cares. Opening procurement to scrutiny does not slow a project, it inoculates it against the quiet rot that ruins so many promises. A canal is concrete and steel, but trust is the glue that keeps it from cracking under the stress of politics. Now widen the lens beyond one country. Across the continent, irrigation has taken many forms. Some nations rely on vast gravity-fed schemes fed by big dams. Others choose thousands of small pumps and drip lines that farmers manage plot by plot. Each model has trade-offs. Large systems deliver scale but demand disciplined institutions. Decentralized systems are resilient but can be expensive per hectare and hard to regulate. The path chosen here blends the two. Long spines that the state maintains, with finer veins that communities and cooperatives steward. That hybrid can work if responsibilities are drawn clearly and if everyone from minister to ditch writer believes maintenance is heroic, not menial. What should people watch next if they want to measure success without getting lost in argument? They should look for more fields greening outside historical cores. They should look for mills adding shifts, then adding storage, then adding small product lines. They should look for schools adjusting timetables because more children help with real harvests, not because families pulled them out for scarcity. They should look for food prices that stop spiking with the same teeth every lean season. They should listen for a different tone in casual conversation, less brittle humor about broken things and more simple annoyance when a repair crew is late, because lateness will imply the crew exists and usually shows up. This is why the story took off. A country that many outside barely think about offered a matter-of-fact demonstration of something rare. It showed work being done that people could see. It connected a grand narrative of independence to the most basic human need. It suggested that dignity is built in trenches as much as in speeches. That combination is emotionally potent and politically durable. It is also fragile. It needs results, not just images. It needs the patience to keep pouring concrete after the first headlines fade, and the humility to fix mistakes quickly without hiding them. The man at the center of the story carries both the advantage and the burden of youth. He can speak to a restless generation in a voice they hear. He can name the old arrangements and call them by their true names. But no leader outruns the math of delivery. If the water does not arrive when it is supposed to, if promised hectares are not planted when they should be, if markets do not fill with staples at accessible prices, the story will shift. Independence is not only declared. It is serviced, tightened, cleaned, calibrated, and defended. A canal does not care about politics. It rewards discipline and punishes neglect. That is why it is a fair test of any claim to sovereignty. So, did Traore shock the world? Maybe the better question is whether he shocked the people who matter most. The woman who sells grain at dawn. The man who watches gates at midnight with a flashlight and a sense of mission. The teenager who thinks about studying hydrology because the job now has meaning where he lives. If they are surprised to find that promise is held, then yes, this was a shock. If they are no longer surprised a season from now because reliability has become normal, then the real transformation has begun. If you have watched this far, you know this channel does not chase noise for its own sake. We look for quiet revolutions that change how people live. A trench across a field is not romantic. But a country deciding to cut those trenches without waiting for foreign permission is a statement worth remembering. Water is power. Power is choice. Choice is freedom. And freedom, in the end, must be maintained like a gate, oiled often, tested under pressure, repaired before it fails. Now it is your turn. Do you believe a network of practical canals can change a nation faster than one spectacular megaproject? Do you think building without Western financing will harden independence, or do you worry it will create new dependencies under new names? What is the right balance between speed and oversight when a government wants to prove that sovereignty is not a slogan? If you lived beside one of these canals, what would success feel like to you in an ordinary week? Tell us in the comments, because your answers help us test ideas against reality. If this conversation challenged you, subscribe to AfriPol Lens, like this video, and share it with someone who still thinks development is a press release. Your engagement helps us bring field-level stories into the light. Join the community, not as spectators, but as people who demand that words become structures and structures become lives improved.